Today, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Walker Deibel. He wrote the book Buy and Build, created the Acquisition Lab. And if there's one person that I would love to talk to about acquisition entrepreneurship, it's Walker Deibel. Hello, and welcome to a new episode of the Business of Meeting podcast. Today, I'm so happy to speak with the person that is the number one name in acquisition entrepreneurship. He's phenomenal. He created the Acquisition Lab. He wrote the book Buy and Build, and he's a fantastic human being, a teacher, a father, an entrepreneur. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Walker Deibel.
Eric, I'm so happy to be here. I don't know how to follow up after that intro. Gosh, I feel like it's downhill from here. So excited to hang out with you.
Thank you. Me too. And the thing is, I didn't even exaggerate one bit because you have a fantastic story. But why don't we start with the beginning and tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. From what angle? How do you want to do it? You want me to like run through my resume? You want it like goal in mind?
Why did you start being an entrepreneur? What gets you there? What is your background?
Yeah. Okay. So let me start here. I think it was one of these things where, when I was growing up, okay, we would always have Thanksgiving at my house, and my dad's side of the family, every single member of that family owned their own company, right? It was sort of like small business owner profile, right? Like it wasn't entrepreneur. Like this is St. Louis, Missouri, right? And every Thanksgiving, like the brothers would all kind of huddle, and my grandfather would all kind of huddle, and they would talk about like the economy and like business and just like how things were working and how money was flowing, and the Fed, and all this stuff. And then my mom's side of the family, they're all like artists and academics, right? And I'm sort of overstating on both sides, but not really. I think that everyone would sort of agree with these generalities. And so I always had this, interest in being creative and thinking creative, but also had this underlying need to always be economically sustainable, right? And so as I sort of, began to age, I was actually an English literature major in school, okay? And
wow.
But the minute I graduated, I became a stockbroker, right? Everyone was like, "Oh, you want to teach?" I'm like, "No." They're like, "Why don't you study business?" I'm like, "Buy low, sell high. What else do you want to know?" Like, hire the accountant. Don't be the accountant, hire the accountant. I get it. Like, it's all about communicating, etc. By the way, so I graduated in 1995. At that time, more CEOs had an English major than any other college degree. Just
really,
in the United States. So didn't know it at the time. It went that direction. So I got out. I knew I had to sort of establish myself. Became a stockbroker right at the end of the tail end of the tech boom. Mm-hmm. And so about 6 months after my first job out of college, I was licensed by the SEC, like totally learning the public markets. And then they moved me and just put me on receiving margin calls. So people were calling in completely stressed out because we were about to start selling their stuff off because the economy was crashing, right? And so, it's one of these things where at that time, which what I'm trying to anchor in is sort of like the tech boom, right? Like I don't want to say like the genesis of the internet, but it was sort of like entrepreneurship as we understand it today, right? It was the sort of transition from the old economy into the new economy. Amazon was the biggest bookstore, you know what I mean, kind of a thing. And Apple was coming out. It was like the days of Steve Jobs, right? Like PayPal was emerging. And so it was one of these where, I was young right at that time, but I was not in it, right? So after I got laid off with 6,000 other people during the tech bust, I kind of looked for a job for a couple of months, and then 9/11 happened, which was a dark time. But there was just no jobs at that time where I was living in Denver, right? And so I moved out to the Bay Area because I was like, look, startups are a thing. Like I'm creative. I understand the markets. Like I really want to, be next to somebody who's starting their own thing, right? Like I don't need to be starting the business. I had all my ideas, like they were just like either too big or like I had no idea how to get, so it's just sort of like, let's go be there. Eric, it kind of worked. But what I would say is that I ended up getting my picking up a little bit of my foothold or momentum in film, which is a completely different story. So we're not going to go Yeah. But I moved back to St. Louis to go get my MBA at the Olin School of Business. Okay. I decided to use that as a resume shield and launched a startup with a few other MBA classmates that was very, very promising and didn't work out. Let
I
me
remember
pause.
I
Yeah,
remember you mentioned that story, and it's, that's also something different when I look originally from Belgium, as you know. Here in Belgium, if you do that once, then you have the banks, you have the people that you're dead. Here, it's, you know what? As long as, of course, you didn't do anything illegal, you've learned, you've gained experience. So we can look at what are we going to do next, right?
that's right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the Silicon Valley sort of lessons are all about like having at bats, right? And I think that the that's one thing that I really embraced. It was taking a lot of at bats and just knowing that if you keep swinging, you're going to hit, right? I remember I was at a cocktail party maybe 5 years ago, and I was talking with somebody, and we were just sort of talking, and then finally she said to me, "Boy, you've like failed a lot," and it's because I'm not bashful about talking about it, right? So pretty much everything I've tried to do, I failed at least once.
Yeah.
But you get
Like every
practice.
successful people, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said to a friend of mine recently, I was like, Rick, I've never been lucky, other than being born like a white guy in the United States. Like, so the first day was good, but after that, like, I'm just not lucky at all. And he was just like, no, man. And he kind of leaned into me and he was like, Walker, everything that you've been through and all of these things that have happened all led you to where you are today. And I
Absolutely.
think I think that we all kind of know that about failures, right? But
Yeah.
that is one thing I've learned is just go for it and just don't be afraid of what happens. You get one life, you know.
Absolutely.
And we're
I
gonna
love it so much.
we're gonna talk about entrepreneurship, and we're probably gonna talk about acquisition entrepreneurship today, Eric. And the one thing that over and over again, right, that I see is that I talk to so many like mid-career professionals. And they're like, how do I do this? How do I do this? And I'm like, look, the first thing you need to do is get off the paycheck because it's just as addicting as crack cocaine. And the minute you graduate with your MBA degree and you've got some student debt and you go get that like high paying job, and then all of a sudden you go to work, you get promoted, like you pay off your student loans. Now you're mid-career, you've got the whole golden handcuffs, and they own your life, and
Absolutely.
that can be a good thing. Like, there's nothing against it. It's just that like entrepreneurship in owning your own business is really sort of like it's unlike anything else, right? I know you're an EO, and the whole purpose of the Entrepreneurs Organization is that the theory is no one else can understand what the hell we're going through, right? Like, in other words, if I go out and like can't make payroll, like you can't talk about that, right? With like if you're 48 hours away from not being able to make payroll, like who are you supposed to talk to about that? And like, and how are you going to solve that problem? If
Your
you go
forum.
land, yeah, if you go land like, I'm in St. Louis, I'll see the Anheuser-Busch account, and they prepay, whatever, $4 million in cash on day one, and it's like the biggest win of your life. Who are you going to talk to about that? Like, you can't, right? You
Exactly.
can't talk about it.
Yeah.
And so it's all about this sort of 5%. And what I would say is that entrepreneurship is really like living the biggest life possible, the most engaged life possible. It allows you to have impact. It allows you to have a vehicle for wealth creation and wealth destruction simultaneously. If
Yeah.
I'm if I'm honest with you, Eric, I woke up at 2 o'clock this morning, okay, and I walked around my house pacing, working through things that I'm doing in my businesses, and I fell asleep. I went up back to bed at 5:15 a.m. Got up at 6:15 with the dog. It's just
Yep.
you can't get out of it. And it's
Yeah.
been a couple of years since I've been that like hung up, but like it's part of you.
Absolutely. And listening to you and the passion, I get excited listening to what you're saying, and obviously reviving in English experiences. By the way, when you use the language, you say at bat, swing, and everything. I quickly have to tell you a story that happened to me in St. Louis, because you're talking about St. Louis. So I was at the MPI World Education Conference. My great friend Kitty Radcliffe, who's the head of the convention, the destination marketing organization there, and we were there on the field of the baseball field with the mayor, Francis, and she is introducing us. It was some years ago, and of course, what do? They make fun of my accent, so I have to find a comeback. And so I look at the mayor, said, Mayor Francis, we're here on the field. You just won at that time the 9 World Series. He said, yes. Can you explain to me, because of my accent, I don't understand. Besides the US and Canada, who's playing baseball?
The World Series.
And so they look at me, they laughed at anyway. But to your point, the percentage of balls that a great baseball player can hit is like ridiculous, but they keep getting at it. And what you did is exactly that. You kept getting at it. You said you had a lot of failure, like everybody. I heard about a lot of overnight success that took 10 years in the building, but you are at that moment where there has been the crisis that you started a business with friends, what didn't work. What goes into your mind, and what is the first acquisition that you did?
Yeah. I mean, even just working on that startup, I put myself in the hospital. Like I was working so hard. I ended up spending the night in the hospital one day, and I was in my late 20s. I mean, and so, I think that, having a very strong work ethic and being a little imbalanced is really important. Or having the ability to be imbalanced for short periods of time, taking the long view, right? Let's talk about that. But I, since we're on baseball, I want to say one more thing, which is I think often about acquisition entrepreneurship as the sort of Moneyball of entrepreneurship, right? So there's this book and film Moneyball, right, where it's all about the Boston Red Sox go out and basically figure out like, okay, we can't compete by recruiting these heavy hitter, slugger, home run hitters. So how are we going to win? We don't have the budget, and they end up figuring out, sabermetrics, right? Which is, the concept in short is find guys who can get on base, right? And if all your guys can kind of get on base, then you're actually going to outperform the sluggers that they can't afford. Okay. When I think about acquisition entrepreneurship, the thing is that it's really, you're not starting a business from scratch and creating a market out of nothing, which I've tried to do on a couple of occasions. And Eric, the thing is that, they say like 1 out of 10 startups succeed. Okay. That means 9 out of 10 don't, right? And why? And lack of product market fit is the number one reason why that is. Okay. If you buy an existing business, you're starting with existing revenue, you're starting with existing customers, you've got established infrastructure, and it's got ongoing earnings. So not only does it have all of these things that you need that you can use as a foundation for growing and innovating in your own business, but you also don't have to run around town giving equity away in exchange for dollars to try to build that infrastructure. Because it has existing earnings, you're able to simply go to a bank and get a loan in order to acquire the business, right? And a lot of these sort of like, Main Street, lower middle market businesses compared to, easily compared to the publicly traded markets. I mean, the valuations of these companies, because the market is so thin, they're very affordable. Okay. You might be paying 3 years of earnings, maybe 5 years of earnings for one of these companies, right? And you can get a bank loan for up to 90% of the transaction to get it done. All right. And there's
the SBA, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And the thing is like, when I look back at my career, I'm not a slugger. I can get on base, and I get on base frequently, often, and a lot. So let me answer your question. All right, the first acquisition. All right, this is actually something that I don't lead with. All right, this is something I don't talk about too often, and the reason why is because I think you'll find out why. So the thing is when I graduated from my MBA program, I sort of was like, my startup failed. I wasn't looking for a job because like it was so promising. So I ended up being like that one kid out of a class of like 200 that doesn't have a job. And everyone knows that that kid is the worst kid in the class. And so no one wants to hire me now. Right. And that's fine. I really didn't want to go corporate, which had this sort of, like, well, why'd you go get an MBA? But I really wanted all of the knowledge, right? Like I didn't want anyone in the room or anyone in the boardroom knowing things that I didn't know. I wanted the frameworks, right? And it gave me the confidence.
Let me interrupt you just right there.
Yeah.
When I was involved in the student organization called ISEC, there was one of the advisors, Jagdish Parikh, was an amazing Indian businessman. And I remember clearly having a conversation with him in Brussels. And I said, Dr. Parikh, do you think I should do an MBA?
Yeah.
And he looked at me and said, Eric, the knowledge of an MBA should be acquired, but that does not mean that you have to do an MBA.
That's right. I would completely.
That was phenomenal. So you go there, you're getting the knowledge of the MBA, and you know you don't want to work into corporate. Sounds very familiar to me, by the way, but then what?
Yeah, I mean, I was okay going corporate for a little while, but I knew I was going to end up with my own jam, right? And I think that, so I graduated and I was like, I know there's a way that I can buy an existing company. And we're talking 2004, right, at this time. And 2004, I mean, Eric, 2017, I was talking to people about buying a company and writing buy then build, and I was told it was a bad idea. In 2004, like people were like, that's not even entrepreneurship. It's not a thing, right? It's not a thing. And in 2004, I remember talking to my professor about buying a small business, and he tried to talk me out of it. And this was after I graduated, and I was still hanging out or like on campus, being like, I don't know what I'm going to do, blah blah. But like he was trying to talk me out of it. He's like, that's stupid, bad idea. And I was like, what? Now, by the way, I teach entrepreneurship through acquisition at my alma mater, the Olin School of Business. And so I knew there was a way to do it. And so I kind of just started walking down that path, trying to figure it out. Okay. I discovered a few things. I discovered, number one, a very opaque market. It was really hard to get any data, right? Number two, extremely decentralized. Like there's just no, MLS, for real estate. Yeah. There's no, all the best there is like biz buy sell, which is like where, all desperate businesses go to die. It's just like, I mean, it was terrible. Like it's decentralized. It's fragmented, it's opaque, and there was no efficient way to navigate it. So I just started calling people, right? And like people who had bought a business before, or, any broker that would talk to me. And I just kind of looked around. And 6 months in, okay, but to be clear, we also didn't have like Stanford doing research on this. So today we know that average search takes about 18 months. Of course, we didn't even call it a search then. There was no word for it, right? So we know it takes 18 months. We know that statistically, right? Plus or minus. And so the thing is like after about 6 months, I was feeling very, very broke, Eric. And I went corporate. I couldn't find a deal. Like the SBA was not doing what they're doing today, right? At that time. And so I found it very difficult to get financing. I was going to need some kind of backer. That like someone at one point pitched me like I should buy this pet cemetery. I mean, it was just absolute disaster, right? I mean, it's like, okay, there's still a lot to learn. Like I'm not making progress very fast. Plus, I was what, 27, 28 or something, maybe, and I probably looked like a teenager, right, at the time. Just doesn't help in that line of work. So
nothing has changed on that front.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm gonna kill it at the old folks' home. That's how I think about it. So the thing is like here I am running around, and then I go corporate. Okay, and I went corporate, and not to brag, but like I just absolutely crushed it, right? I mean, I was like kind of like leading change, leading communication, and at one point my manager flew me out to I don't remember, Indianapolis or something, and sat me down, and she was instructed to train me on this spreadsheet, which I then looked at, and I had created it and sent it to people in the company. It was just this sort of like, and I was like third in the country, and like ranked for the year. And I was like, I got to get out of here. I'm spending all of my time, all of my life building a brand for this other company, right? And it was publicly traded. And I looked at the guys in the office that, were the management team. They owned all the equity. Okay. They were making the decisions. I was not allowed in the room, and I didn't like it, Eric. I mean, here I am crushing myself, and it's like, for what? What am I going to do? They're going to let me work here next month too? So I started looking again, right? And then this is when I kind of started my part-time search, right? And at the time, I was actually really interested in buying, an online-based business, because I really saw, we talked about like the internet being started right in 1999. But like, I was trying to figure out, like, okay, I was working in healthcare, and it was kind of like, how do I merge like sort of healthcare and the internet? And I was kind of looking that way, and I was like, what assets do I need? And can I buy some that are already cash flowing, right? Because I was trying to figure this out. And I was going that direction, and I was also very open, not entirely clear on what I wanted, just opportunistic. And my dad called, and he said, let's have lunch. And I had lunch with him. And he said, I think you should come work at the company. And I said, why would I do that? Why would I quit my high paying job and come work at your little company? And he said, let's see if you can show up on time first. And he stood up and walked out. Okay. Now, here's the thing. I want to be very clear, Eric. My whole life, my dad was like, there is no role for you at my company. I'm not going to be the guy that sells it to his kid who screws it up. Go do your own thing. You're not invited. Like, safety net cut. Like, it was just like, yes, he owned a business. I was not invited. He was not going to do it. He tried to sell it once along the way, even to somebody else. He was under contract. And it turned out the guy didn't have the money, kind of a thing. But anyway, so I worked there. I worked with him, and
You show on time?
yeah, that wasn't a problem for me. But he had a whole management team. The company was actually started by my great grandfather on my mom's side. Okay, so my dad likes to say, wherever you work, if two people die, you'll own it. So just figure out who those two people are. And so the thing is I worked there for about a year before I bought the company, which basically was me getting a bank loan with a full personal guarantee, writing him a check, and him not coming to work the next day. That was basically what it was. The next day. He didn't show up. Yeah. Wow. Now, again, we had a full management team. He took 3 months off leading up to the transaction. But we had a formal board of directors, right? We were doing, maybe 8 million in revenue. And you see why I wouldn't like to start with that, which is like, hey, I bought my dad's company, right? Like, you should buy a company too. Now, here's the thing that I want to be very clear, though. I want to be very clear. I mean, there's a lot of people have asked, like, well, why did Bill Gates start Microsoft, right? Like, everyone saw the cover of this magazine, the timing was right with, in Silicon Valley for the like all of this stuff was happening. Why him? And a lot of people have come to this conclusion of like, well, he went to this school that had invested a bunch of money in this lab, in this computer lab, and he got this and whatever, and it was just this series of events that led to this thing. And I want to be clear: the minute I bought my dad's company, a couple of things happened. One, a bunch of my dad's cohort started coming out of the woodwork saying, "How did you do that?" Right? How did you do that? How did you sell your business, even if it's to your kid? Like, how'd you work that out? Two, I fit the profile, Eric. I am the oldest white male son of a business owner. Okay. And the minute I saw the transaction, I'd spent so much time in startup world that I was like, geez, if all of these people that I would like running around hustling with understood what just happened, we wouldn't be trying so hard. Like, all of this can be acquired and easily, right? And so because of that, I sort of knew that there was like a kind of a better way to go about this, and in that one that was being completely ignored, right? So the thing is I love innovation. I embrace innovation. Starting from scratch is very smart sometimes, okay? But I can tell you that from my life between 1995 through basically 2018, no one talked about small business acquisition. Acquiring businesses was not part of, the vocabulary.
True.
Yeah.
True. Yeah. And that's when you decided to write the book? Buy Then Build?
Yeah. Well, I wanted the book back in 2004 when I was trying to navigate this private capital market, right? Especially like Main Street. And so I bought the printing company. There was a couple of reasons I bought it. One, I obviously could, because I was close with the owner. Okay. Two, Two, I couldn't buy an online business because it was a complete intangible asset and banks wouldn't lend on nothing with collateral. The printing company had all kinds of, big iron and just like equipment. And we had a 50,000 square foot manufacturing facility, right? So the banks liked it. Okay. Three, it was sizable, but the thing is that there was a huge transition going on in the printing industry at this time, right? So shortly after I bought it, everyone sort of, like print is dead was sort of the big headline, right? We didn't understand it at the time, but it was the first Amazon move. And they basically took out all the bookstores, right? They took out all the bookstores were going out of business, newspapers were going out of business. Consumers thought it was the same thing. They're like, print is dead. It's different. I mean, internet and information took out the newspapers. Twitter maybe took out the newspapers. But books, more people were buying books than ever before. More authors were writing and publishing books than ever before. What was happening was that Amazon was making online book ordering and book publishing very accessible. And as a result, everyone stopped going to the bookstore, which was nothing but a, 15,000 square foot coffee shop. Okay. And they just started ordering books on Amazon and going to Starbucks. And that's what happened, right? That's what happened. So I looked at digital printing technology and realized that all of the publishers that were our customers had this huge library of books, but they would only print like about 20% of them, and the other 80 was completely ignored. Why? Because they'd be tying up cash and inventory. So I realized if I could turn short-run digital book printing into JIT inventory for our book publishers, then we actually stood a chance at the biggest growth opportunity that the company had seen in 80 years. Mm-hmm. Okay, since Gutenberg invented the printing press, this was the next big innovation change, right?
While everybody is panicking and running away.
Yeah, all you had to do is sort of look at the data, right? And yeah, that's true. There was no one in my generation going into book printing. I'll tell you that. So I wanted to write this book back in 2004. I got the idea. Obviously, I didn't have the resume at that time. And it wasn't until much later. And ultimately, I sold the printing company in 2013 to a acquisition target. I was trying to grow through acquisition. And then subsequently ended up buying another 6 companies with the proceeds and a whole bunch of bank debt. And it was during that time that, I knew the public capital markets, licensed by the SEC, et cetera, but I wanted to digest everything I could about the private capital markets. So I went out and became a certified M&A advisor and, an M&A master intermediary, certified exit planning advisor, whatever. You had something, I was taking it, right? I was working with brokers all the time and just getting knowledge about the space. And so all of it kind of culminated into a 4.5-year project of writing Buy Then Build.
Which is how we connect. But the funniest thing is, you were speaking at MMT.
Yes.
About acquisition entrepreneurship.
That's right.
I was fascinating about your talk, and we had a quick chat afterward. Fast forward a year or two later, I'm reading Buy Then Build, and I'm speaking with Jason Gaignard, and I said, Jason, what's the name of the guy again that you brought in Cabo? And then he looked at me and said, Walker Deibel. Say, no way, I'm just reading his book. Exactly. And say, oh, by the way, he's an EO member as well. So I had no idea. That's how we reconnect. Now, the next thing that I would really like you to talk about, because I think it's a phenomenal program that you and Chelsea Wood have put together, the Acquisition Lab. So you have the book; it's very successful.
Yeah.
First book on acquisition entrepreneurship. When did come the idea of the Acquisition Lab? And by the way, for those listening, what can they learn in the Acquisition Lab?
Yeah, the Acquisition Lab at its core is really it was sort of like, well, look, I mean, if there was an MBA program that sort of helped people actually acquire a business, what would that look like? Call it an accelerator or whatever. But mm-hmm. the anchor was really sort of like, how do I build world-class instructional content? How do people learn? What makes world-class content? How do I build it, right? Along the way, Buy Then Build became a textbook for 30% of the schools that teach entrepreneurship through acquisition, which also became the #1 elective course at every single MBA school program in which it's taught, which is only like 8 schools. And it's like Harvard, Stanford, University of Chicago, Northwestern, London Business School, INSEAD, Yale, Columbia. I mean, it's the best schools in the world are teaching it, right? And so,
And the University of St. Louis.
and now Washington University in St. Louis is teaching it as well. And so the thing is like, sorry, so world class instruction was the cornerstone. Then I decided I really wanted a vetted community. I didn't want to be like, hey, I'm an entrepreneur with my course and mastermind, like come sign up and give me money. Like it's you get in if we think you can succeed. Okay, like only about 25% of applicants are accepted. For any of your listeners, please don't let that scare you. Okay, if you're this far in the interview, you're obviously interested in it. It's half of the battle. Number 3 is sort of like, all right, let's build out a suite of tools and resources. And number 4 is group coaching, right? And it goes everywhere from, recruiting Chelsea Wood as the managing director of the lab, who, grew a company $3 billion doing buy-side biz dev, spent 5 years doing post-merger integration. She's a certified M&A advisor as well. To, Karen is the former director of the Career Center at the Olin School of Business. And me and Chelsea work together to come up with buyer profiles. We bring in debt lenders, we do personality assessments, but we also, you'll notice, Eric, we don't teach like due diligence in like the first couple of months. Why? Because no one should be buying a business in 30 days. Okay. So the program goes on for 12 plus months during your search, and you get the information as you need it. Okay. That was sort of what we wanted to do. We wanted to meet people where they were and actually get them to succeed. I'll just share real quick. The results from last year are 150 members were accepted. Out of that, almost 35 transactions were completed, which was over $60 million in transactional value, all almost from first-time entrepreneurs. We looked at and almost acquired a deal that was 50 million. And we looked at a few deals that were less than $1 million in transactional value. So it's that kind of size range is our goal.
It's amazing.
Yeah, thanks. I got the idea first. So I had this idea of writing, buy, then build back in 2004 as I was sort of going through it. When I was running the printing company, there was a emerging test prep company called Veritas Prep. Okay. And they were sort of the elite provider of GMAT test preparation. Okay. It's sort of like, if you want to go to Harvard, what are you going to do? Like go take the Kaplan program, like everybody else who went to KU, which is where I went, for undergrad. But it's sort of like, we want to do the best, and we're going to provide admissions consulting and like all this. And they help people get to their dream. Okay. With education, basically coaching, right. And a very driven program. And I was like, that'd be really cool to create this program for like, acquisition entrepreneurship, right? And helping people figure out how to actually do it. While I was going through and learning about the private capital markets, a couple of things happened. Twice when I bought a company, the broker was like, boy, you like really understand this. And I was like, yes, I do. And then they decided they wanted me to be the successor of their brokerage, and they tried to sell me their whole brokerage twice. Okay. Then I had a guy fly out from the coast and take me out to like a steak lunch. He wanted me to like, do these like $50 to $100 million deals, because I was the only non-M&A advisor going all these things, right? And it was like, okay, well, it's clear that people think I understand this. But I went to this guy who helps people find companies, like one-on-one, kind of like what I'm talking about. And, he charged $125,000 for the year, okay, to help you navigate this business. And so then I started saying, well, I had a meeting with him, and I started saying, well, do you do this? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, why wouldn't I just do that? Because I can do it this way. And he was like, okay. And then I said that about 6 times. And he said, why are you here? And I was like, I don't know. He's like, you know how to do all of this. And I'm like, got it. Thank you. And I left. Then I started learning about these buy-side advisors, and it's like they're really working for private equity firms, right? And it's a $5,000 monthly commission and then a double Lehman success formula. So when I look at acquisition entrepreneurs, they're really stuck. It's like, if I've never bought a business before, I really don't know where to go.
Correct.
To sort of accelerate my learning curve and help me succeed. Mm-hmm. And so it was this combination of all of that knowledge and experience merged with, frankly, Veritas Prep. and saying like, how do I build this sort of elite training program that helps people achieve their goals?
It's
And
awesome.
it wasn't until I wrote Buy Then Build, obviously became a bestseller. I'm People kept coming up to me and saying, Walker, will you help me find and buy a business?
Yeah.
And I'm like, no, I can't charge you enough for that. And I don't know that you're going to buy anything. And you're literally going to give me six figures and you might not succeed. You're not going to be happy and I'm going to get rich. Right. So it's not going to work. So I created the lab to solve that
Fantastic.
problem.
Beautiful story. Is entrepreneurship or acquisition entrepreneurship for everyone?
No, absolutely not. You know the answer to that, Eric. So anyway, so I think first of all, entrepreneurship is not for everybody. Okay. I wish there was a world where it was for everybody, and maybe someday in the future it is. Like maybe the gig economy will translate into, small, medium, and large versions of this story. Okay. But people like, my wife, she's a science instructor. She has no interest and like it doesn't get her going, right? Like it's just not for her. And as much as I'm like, oh my God, you should do this. Oh my God, you should do that. It's not for her, right? A lot of people wonder if it is for them or not, or if they have what it takes, right? And I understand the question because until you do it, you don't really know. However, being an entrepreneur is not a job title. It's a condition. It's a thing inside you and you cannot help it. And if you keep getting fired at your job, that's clue one. If you are like second in command, always a bridesmaids, never a bride kind of a story, and you just execute your whole life, that's a clue. You can jump ship, right? Or you can stay working with somebody else if that's your path. So that's sort of, number one, entrepreneurship or not entrepreneurship. And then when it comes to acquisition versus starting from scratch, I'd say that even that depends on, your risk tolerance to a certain degree, how comfortable you are with debt to a certain degree, probably your age and experience level to a certain degree. I think that coming out of undergraduate and going out, running out and buying a business isn't really a smart idea for most people, but I think that it really comes down to the idea and what it is. Like, on the one hand, we like to think to ourselves things like, Apple Computer couldn't have been acquired. You can't buy that. You have to start it from scratch. Like this is the most innovative company of all time. Elon Musk bought Tesla, and then he later got sued for claiming to be a co-founder. Okay.
I remember that. Yeah.
He also acquired PayPal, by the way. Okay. Yeah, he's starting SpaceX, but he's also acquiring all the best talent, in the world from other places. So the thing is, it's just sort of like, what's the angle and how are we going to do it? Right. Like, is it a new idea? Is it sort of like Henry Ford saying like, you ask people what they want and they say faster horses. So I have to go off and invent cars and change the world, or, are you able to, I don't know if there was like a distributorship of, wagons back in the day, but you could buy that distributorship and then launch your cars into that distributorship probably a lot faster. It didn't
And
happen.
by the way,
that example, but
apparently Elon Musk slept 2 years almost on the floor of the factory with people just to make sure that he was developing well Tesla. So it's not didn't happen overnight.
No, I mean it's I mean all of these the lines are blurred in the perfect version,
Yeah.
right? And I think the point is there's only two ways to grow a company, and one is through innovation and one is through acquisition. And the benefits of innovation are that you're changing the world, but it takes a long time, and it's sort of like the analogy is getting the space shuttle out of orbit, right? It takes 99% of the energy just to get it up, right? And then once you're up there, it takes 1% to basically fly all around outer space and come back. Buying an existing company is like the fastest way to grow for most businesses. Okay, because like it's literally like you can double the size of your company in a single day, right? It's hard. Do not think this is easy. I don't mean to make this look easy. I don't mean to like simplify it. The point
and to your point, yes, I know the answer, and it's always not invented here, so it's always better to have somebody else answering. But my takes is entrepreneurship is not for everyone, and it's okay.
Yes.
You don't have to be an entrepreneur. But from the moment you do that, to your point, there is all the bootstrapping, all the acquisition, and I know that you're living life at 300 miles an hour, and that you have another meeting obviously coming up. But I cannot leave you, I cannot end this conversation without asking the Jason question, which I love. When we meet face to face in 1 year with a bottle of champagne, what will we be celebrating?
Your success acquiring a business, of course, Eric. I don't know what else we'd be celebrating. That's it.
I'm talking about Workedible.
Okay, so 1 year from now, let me think about that. Like what I'm working on right now is, my world sort of works in these kind of three legs of the same stool. And I guess the thing that's sort of interesting to me right now that I'm working on is I'm doing something I've never done, which is I'm making a move into real estate. Okay. And there's a part of St. Louis, it's called the Central West End, which is really kind of cool and hip. And then there's this other area called the University City Loop, which is this sort of like, gentrified, like hip area. But like where they sort of meet, which is just sort of northeast of Forest Park, the biggest city park in the country, is just this, very like desolate spot, right? That's really underutilized. And so I've partnered up with a few people and we're developing this area. And, I'm about to close on a loan that's $47 million. And I've never done anything like that. It's, we're building like a 200 unit apartment complex, and it's going to be very, very impactful where it is, but it's also very, very hyper local. And it's a bigger project than I'm used to working on. And so I'm super excited about it. And here's the point. It's not just like an apartment building. Okay. We're like embracing art, right? Like the same people that, I don't know what I can say because we're still in discussions, but like the same people that worked on like the modern art building in St. Louis and like the art museum and like, I mean, like the external facade, we're working with, I can't say, but like, this is going to be an absolute stunning work of art on its own. It's going to be it should be unlike anything else. And it gets me up in the morning to the point. Yes, I already shared with you, I was up all night. When I got up in the morning, we were out of coffee. So I went out this morning, went to Starbucks, got a coffee, and then I drove to the site and I walked, we're putting together these 11 lots. And so I was walking around downtown St. Louis this morning with a cup of coffee, sort of like feeling like Kevin Costner in the Field of Dreams.
That's awesome.
So I know it's a left turn on what we were discussing, but it's a new thing, and I'm thinking about how does this work with Buy Then Build, right? I mean, like, in other parts of my life, we're buying all kinds of IP and creating films out of it, right, and selling it to the streamers and things like that. But moving into real estate is sort of a totally different beast, and I feel like we're using a lot of the intangible benefits that are already there. But I'm not buying something like existing. Like this is kind of a start from scratch. We're just trying to build it in a market that's already there.
Well, I hope we can drink to that. And I thank you so much for your time today. I hope it's, and I know it will inspire a lot of people listening. And certainly everything you've written or built, I love it. I enjoyed it. And it's a pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you very much, Walker.
Eric, always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you.
Walker, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Always inspiring listening to you. So thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to connect with me, please follow me on LinkedIn or join my Facebook group, www.eventbusinessformula.com/group. And if you enjoy this conversation and you think it can benefit somebody in your network, please share it. Thank you. Bye.